I would say the biggest argument for why they would bring it to RDNA 2 is to have some version of this on the PS5 and Steam Deck, and to a lesser degree, Xbox. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. This episode is brought to you by JLC PCB. Get a $10 coupon for their Flex PCBs. The link in the description. And it is also brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. Get Windows 11 Professional for $23 with offer code Broken Silicon. Dan, how are you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I mean, I don't know. I've started a new hobby of building terrariums. This is one of those random things. I want this. I love when I get your perspective. What has been the arc of Tom randomly doing a new hobby again, which is something I'm liable to do?
Usually you're just like, I'm thinking about doing a thing, and then over the course of like 2 to 3 weeks, it's like I've spent $300 on this, and we'll see.
$300. I almost spent that much. I will say I have not spent that much. I did wind it down. Okay. Our friend Brock, the infamous Brock, wouldn't it be funny if he wasn't real? We just said we had this
He's just friend. A figment of our imagination.
Or just to be able to say there's another person.
Sure.
But yes, maybe even sadder. Maybe we're just insane. But like from his perspective, I started with like a jar aquarium terrarium thing with like a shrimp or something. Some of it went well, some of it went badly, and then like a week later I'm like, and here's this whole ecosystem I just built from the things I learned from 2 jars I made. But yeah, I don't know. I've done this with hiking, you could say motorcycles, right? It's like I'm thinking of doing something. A month later, Dan, I did all this stuff. And your answer is usually cool. Actually, no, you did think that the aquarium looked nice. You do.
I do want to start an aquarium at some point myself, but I don't know what I want to do with it yet. So we'll see.
The direction I'm going, I like just like micro ecosystems. I'm working on a brackish mangrove biome. I feel like you would want to have some, genetics. Dan here. For people who don't know, who maybe started listening more recently, Dan's done a lot of work in college and still now with genetics and scientific research. I imagine you'd want to do something where you're like, look at this weird fish population I created.
Yeah, that's the hope.
I'm more focused on the plants and the shrimpies, but you are the the fish mass murderer or the frog mass murderer?
One of the two, whatever we want.
Maybe both. Yeah. Well, this is supposed to be about gaming hardware. Let us move on to the corrections. Carbon Cry writes and it says, Tom, in Broken Silicon 328, you complained that AMD does not put some PlayStation blocks on PC GPUs, and you picked the Tempest audio engine as an example of something that is in the PlayStation 5, but for some reason there isn't an equivalent in dedicated graphics cards with Radeon. However, RDNA does have this. Tempest is a modified GCN compute unit running true audio next to save space. Now, it's not dedicated, but this is a 3D audio acceleration designed for Polaris in the PS4 that runs directly on CUs. And so I would argue they're basically already doing this with RDNA, except using work groups instead, which have plenty of games actually to this day that still use true audio next path. And so to say it failed isn't also true as well. Of course, PlayStation exclusive will use it the best, and they maybe save some die space by having a dedicated one. But I wouldn't say they haven't taken anything from each other. I think that's fair. I still think the idea that like it would be like a dedicated extra like few millimeters squared of silicon. Having said that, I don't know. I'm sure this is where someone from AMD could jump in and message me after this episode and be like, yes, we could add 5 millimeters squared of silicon. Also, if you use true audio, it removes 0.1% performance to just run it across 64 compute units that run at 3.3 gigahertz. So like, why would we bother with this?
Yeah, it's probably fair.
Yeah, but I guess it's a fair correction though, Carbon Cry. This time. No, it's almost always. I say almost always fair. Sometimes it is a little pedantic sometimes, though. I'll be honest. I feel like Carbon Cry, we know each other well enough that I can say that. Anyways, I'm sure you will write in next episode to tell me
Why
I'm
it's
wrong.
not pedantic.
Yes.
Let
us
write
now
in
move on.
about Heineken again or something.
Don't even mention the beer discussion. That was capturing like 10% of our podcast space for a couple months. I think we've got to
Almost became
mention
a
it.
beer podcast.
There's a moratorium. But if you like beer talk, you can go back to the previous 3 news episodes and you'll get plenty of it. But moving on to, again, what hypothetically our channel is supposedly about, gaming hardware, with story number 1. FSR 4 on RDNA 3 and 2 tested by Hardware Unboxed. Based on what I've seen today, quoting Tim from Hardware Unboxed, there is no doubt that AMD should release the INT8 version of FSR 4. The in-development build that I analyzed thanks to AMD source code Blunder is a significant upgrade on FSR 3 and an improvement upon XeSS that owners of older Radeon cards would often opt to use, I think. For those with RDNA 3 and RDNA 2 GPUs, FSR 4 with INT8 would be the go-to choice for upscaling in modern titles, full stop. Finally, we have broader testing of FSR 4's performance on older Radeon GPUs. Instead of using the hacker methods that were available for a very long time, Hardware Unboxed used the DLL method, which works like DLL swapping DLSS variants, and so is much more hackery. Let's first talk about the performance then. Even on RDNA 4, FSR 4 is costly and generally performs at a 1-tier handicap. So, in other words, FSR 4 balance usually gives FSR 3 quality FPS boosts. But on RDNA 3 and 2, but in return, you get immensely better image quality. Now, on RDNA 3 and 2, this handicap grows to 2 to 3 tiers, depending on if you are talking about RDNA 3 versus RDNA 2. Next to XE super sampling, the penalty is usually 1 tier. However, what matters with upscaling is, for most people these days, visual quality, not if they can get to 5 times the frame rate and have horrible blurry images, where FSR 4 makes up for being slower. So Hardware Unboxed found that FSR 4 performance mode has better quality than FSR 3 or XE super sampling in quality mode, meaning that at the same FPS, FSR 4 looks better. Again, to be clear, what this means, everybody, like you get like, I don't know, a 15%, I don't know what it exactly is, right? A 15% like performance boost with quality FSR 3 with RDNA 2. Okay, well, you only get a 15% boost with FSR 4 performance. Anything above that, actually, you lower your performance, but get a higher image quality. Still, 15% boost to 15% boost, FSR 4 definitely looks better. And so, therefore, FSR 4 is the best upscaler on RDNA 3, and surprisingly, even RDNA 2. Okay, so then the next question is, why doesn't AMD release this? Well, we can really only speculate here at Moore's Law is Dead, but it is worth noting that their shift from rushing releases to launching when ready is what AMD's focus seems to be now, and it has worked out well for them with RDNA 4. And even talked about this with RDNA 4 during their launch, and they have said that if they are launching something officially moving forward, they have to make sure it just works. In fact, there are some anecdotal reports of issues with FSR 4 on older GPUs in some games. Again, this is similar to when people hacked like DLSS into Starfield. And yes, there were some areas with no issues and it looked great. I know. In some games with FSR 4 and RDNA 2, it probably works perfectly. Supposedly The Last of Us Part 1 or something looks great. But there are games where it doesn't work. AMD is not going to release this officially unless they're sure it is working 90% of the time or more, and it isn't a liability to continue to cover. So that's why they wouldn't have released this yet for RDNA 3 or RDNA 2. They're probably still getting it ready, at least for 3. However, the RDNA 2 question feels a little worse considering we at Moore's Law is Dead in a recent loose ends leaked that AMD has no plans to officially release RDNA 4 to RDNA 2. Why would they not do that then if it seems like it should work eventually? Well, beyond the cynical reasons of forcing you to upgrade, we should consider the cost of supporting FSR 4 on such a wide range of hardware, as in it could divert resources from other software features for the newest hardware. Perhaps it is just as well, though, that we now have a simple method to drop an FSR 4 DLL into any FSR 3.1 game. So that means many games don't have official support for it, just like the latest DLSS, but at least you can do this on your own, and this frees AMD to only do the QA testing that they do for their latest pieces of hardware. I would agree with Carbon Cry's write-up. That is probably what their conclusion is. But yeah, so last episode we looked at kind of the hacked versions. Where like, I think we were in the stage of this story of, oh, this is possible. That's crazy. This kind of puts to rest the idea that they couldn't make this work on RDNA 2. But now we're to a situation where it seems like actually it could work quite well if they put in the effort. It's not like RDNA 2 kind of works, would kind of be worth it. It's clearly an upgrade if you were able to have this. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, even in the hacked methods, it looked... I mean, it didn't seem to be glitchy or anything in the games they tested, and it generally created a... I think that the way they discussed it, there were some minor trade-offs, but the general experience would be just better. FSR4 is just better than 3.1 or 3. So... yeah, I mean, I would love to see this come to RDNA 3 and especially RDNA 2, or even RDNA 2, but I don't know. I guess for RDNA 2, my thought would be probably not, because I would go with a more cynical thing. Just there's just not much of a reason for them to do it at this point or support it, other than consumers would like it. But like RDNA 2 is at or nearing end of life, it has to be. But I think bringing this to RDNA 3 should be a huge priority, because we've talked about a million times, RDNA 3 is still arguably their main money getter right now, or could
APUs
be.
and PlayStation.
Yeah. And PlayStation.
Well, RDNA 2 is PlayStation, but PS5 Pro is weird. It's like a hybrid architecture. But
so I think it should be a huge priority for them to get it running on or get it ported working on
the
RDNA
version
3.
PS5 Pro would be more analogous to the RDNA 3 version. I guess we could say that.
Yeah. So I think it should be a big priority to get to RDNA 3, and I'm not going to say I like it not coming to RDNA 2, but I wouldn't bet on it coming to that in any official way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in fact, I would say the biggest argument for why they would bring it to RDNA 2 is to have some version of this on the PS5 and Steam Deck, and to a lesser degree Xbox. But that really is, and who knows? Well, I guess it would be good for gamers, because it could probably work on the Switch too as well if something effort was put in. But I should say AMD shouldn't care if it works on the Switch too, because that's NVIDIA.
Yeah, but with the PlayStation having its own pisser, I don't know if it's that much of a priority to get FSR4 running, although if PSSR is like the more streamlined, better performance, and that FSR is the higher image quality, I would love to see both come to it. I just think
to the original PS5.
Yeah, I just think less of a priority.
Yeah. And it would be interesting to see how they would do it too. I think I talked to you offline about this. Like, the way you would probably want to do it is just, you have FSR4 as an option if you have RDNA 2, and it just doesn't have modes. It's just like one mode to give you a sneak peek of it, and it's maybe like a 10% boost hybrid of like ultra performance in balanced mode. And it's like, yep, here's your 10% boost, and it looks about as good or maybe slightly better than native. And that's what you're getting if you're on RDNA 2. And then maybe people would go, hey, and if I was on RDNA 3 or 4, I would be getting a 20 or 30% boost right now, but it still looked good. But yeah, I don't know. You can see why they wouldn't do it. Again, I would say if they were going to do it, it should be with the aid of like Valve, or with Valve telling them they want to, or Sony. But again, from the Sony perspective, I don't know if Sony cares. Sony is thinking about PS6 right now. They probably would prefer if you bought a PS5 Pro. It'd be on the devs to push Sony to do it too. Like, hey, give us this 10% boost. Like, it's, we're late in the generation, man. Maybe this gets GTA 6 to a firm 60 frames. Like, come on.
And then you bring out Xbox, and I think that would also be a plus to have it on Xbox. I don't know, maybe Microsoft would want to push them to get it working on Xbox, but I also just don't think Xbox is much of a priority for anyone anymore. So,
well, that's an interesting point, actually. Yeah, because they don't have PSSR, Xbox should be pushing AMD a ton to make this work on RDNA 2. Like, they should be like, come on, man.
Yeah, but that would be if the Series X were or in Series S were closer to, like, I don't know, 40 million units sold or something, which I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess they're not near that yet at this point. But maybe it
I
would be
wouldn't bet they're not, but I would say it's damning if they're not even to 40 yet, and some evidence suggests they're not.
Yeah, maybe it would be a priority if it were doing like in the same ballpark as the PS6. I mean PS5, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem to be a priority.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess the final thing I would say about all this is I've seen some people, and you see this all the time, like go, AMD should hire some modders so it actually gets done. And I've seen some people in the comments say the same thing about PS3 backwards compatibility. Why can't Sony just hire these modders? Guys, if Sony wanted PS3 backwards compatibility, it would be done. They have it working. I've been told they have it working in the labs. They just clearly have a reason they don't think it's worth a flat backwards compatibility mode. I've already said, remember everyone, the PS3 has pressure sensitive buttons, so you basically have to patch the game anyways. There's a whole mountain of worms, so like making it consistent and a consistent experience. They'd probably rather just do something with PS6 is my suspicion there. It's the same thing here. There's always a reason they're not doing it with, even though modders did a, I don't want to say half-ass, but like, not like an official version.
No hate to modders, but a lot of the time what they do, a lot of the time what happens with modders, and it's because they're not being paid to do it. There's fewer of them. What they make is, partially borked a lot of the time, where like good enough to be like, there's some weird stuff with this mod, but I'm gonna keep using it, unless we're talking about Skyrim, then or Bethesda mods, then the modders seem to be better programmers than the devs, but
yeah. So it's not that AMD can't do it, it's that they want a fully working version for RDNA 3 that they're probably deciding should their exact performance mode, balance mode, quality mode be for marketing reasons. Like, we don't want the RDNA 3 version, right? If the RDNA 4 variant of FSR 4 gives you a 30% boost, do we give RDNA 3 a 15% with 99% the quality, 100% the quality? Do we want the same boost but a 10% lower quality? I would argue, and I've had devs tell me this is their opinion as well, it should be the lower boost with the higher quality so that it better markets it. You want to market. If you're on FSR, if you're on RDNA 4, this would be even faster, but look how good it looks. You don't want it to look like crap, So those are the decisions they need to make, and they need to make sure it works consistently without breaking a bunch of games when RDNA 3 is running this. And so that it takes more than just getting it up and running, trying a few games and saying it works. They have to rigorously make sure it's where they want it to be and ready to go, because if they're going to support FSR 4 and RDNA 3 now, what this probably means is over the next maybe forever, 5 to 10 years or forever, they're going to constantly support updates until they find a time where they have to break it and say, well, that's the last update you get to that. And that's a big decision. And then to add RDNA 2 to that adds a lot more.
Yeah, and I guess probably not. Do you think there's anything to like having all, because this popped into my head while I was watching their video, like that having official support for all of these different versions of FSR would eventually like become muddled to consumers to in their eyes or something like that? Like, well, there's this version of FSR for RDNA 3 and 2 and 4, and so when you go into a game that has support for like 2, 3, 4, and you're getting different versions of 4 for depending on the generation, it might just be viewed as confusing. Or I was curious if that would be part of their calculus or not.
So, I don't know, and I haven't thought of that, but you saying that makes a lot of sense to me, right? If you're AMD, I mean, how many times did we complain back in the day, Dan, about like the ridiculous Crossfire thing? Like, I wonder if I could find Crossfire AMD compatibility chart. I mean, like if you want to see the extent to which Rebrandion started hitting rakes, where was it? I can't find the chart, but they had this chart that was like different architectures, and it would tell you this one is the 290X, and the 290X doesn't need any Crossfire cables. Then it would go, this is the 270. The 270 does need Crossfire cables, and this is another thing. And then eventually got to like, this supports Crossfire, this doesn't. This one supports 2 Crossfire cables. Yeah. This one supports no Crossfire cables, but it works great. Like, yes, like, do they want to go out there and say, oh, yeah, there's FSR 4 on RDNA 2, but don't count it as FSR 4. Like, I guess what I would argue, maybe they should actually, here's the solution. Call it FSR 3.5. There you go.
Yeah, that could work.
And that way it doesn't tarnish the FSR 4 brand. And I would still suggest if they can do it, they should. But yes, the marketing argument is actually a very important one to me. Like, you don't want to say we're releasing FSR 4 and RDNA 2, and then a bunch of people with RDNA 2 cards who are probably going to upgrade in a year, test it, aren't impressed, don't buy AMD, they buy NVIDIA. Like, that's probably what they're scared of.
If there's just 12 different FSR settings in a video game, it might just be like, what the hell is all of this? Like, why does this perform better than this? Just a thought, but
yeah. All right. Deadeyes117 writes in and says, prior to technologies like DLSS emerging, it was still possible to get a crystal clear 1080p image to display pixel perfect on a 4K panel because it has an exact 2x scale factor in either axis. Other resolutions would look soft due to whatever dumb scaling techniques was used to make the image simply fit on the screen. Do you think there are any advantages to go from 1080p to 4K with technologies like DLSS, or is the advantage negated just by virtue of how the upscaler works? So, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what you meant by this question, but if your question is there an advantage to using 1080p to 4K instead of just playing in 1080p on a 4K screen? Yeah. Like, the upscaler makes it much less loss in image quality and blurriness than if you use the upscaler. Like, the way I've chosen to answer the question personally, Dan, is what I would say is, and this is, more of an answer for when I'm using one of my laptops or an APU system, because my 4090 can just do whatever I want it to do, basically, no matter what. But, I actually do basically do it the same way on my 4090 system as well. When I'm choosing the settings in a game, I'm not like, oh, what resolution can I get away with? I'm like, my laptop's 1800p, my desktop has a 4K screen, so that's what it's at. The laptop's going to be at 1800, the desktop's going to be at 4K, and then I'm going to go, okay, what settings can I notice? I like that one, that looks good. Performance isn't quite as high as I want. Which ones can I turn down without really noticing I get a performance boost? All right, that one. Which ones can I turn up and it doesn't seem to change the frame rate? We'll leave those ones up on Ultra. Always turn the textures to the max because I have Strix Halo in a 4090, so it's not an issue. And then at the end, I turn down FSR or DLSS to the frame rate I want, whether it's quality, balanced, or performance mode. And that's just what I do. I always use the native resolution as the start, and then I choose settings, and then I change the scaling until I get to where I want, unless I find that it gets too blurry, which it usually doesn't. But there's no time I'm not using FSR or DLSS. I'm always using FSR or DLSS.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, I also think what he's asking, though, is like, do you think there's an inherent advantage, though, still with like DLSS and FSR that comes from having it be, why can't I think of the word, like having it scale the same direct in both directions, so in the X and Y axis?
No, yeah, if his question is like, is that still the perfect ratio because it more correctly scales 2:1? No, because it's just using a base resolution and it knows where to put the pixels at the end.
Yeah, and I haven't had a big issue with that for a while. Like my first 4K TV had a kind of Garbo upscaler, so like some games it was kind of broken in, if you remember.
And you'd usually choose 1080p or 4K.
Yeah, I would have to do 1080p or 4K in a lot of games. And a few games like 1440p kind of worked, but I don't know if that was just the game or if it was with my monitor specifically. But I remember like Mountain Blade Bannerlord. If I lowered the resolution, if I didn't do 1080p or 4K, it looked worse than like 640p.
Oh, I've never seen that
It looked terrible.
Yeah, see, I will say I'm someone that never really dealt with this. There was never a time, and I did stick with like a 1080p 144 hertz display for a very long time, and then I had a 4K 60 TV in the living room. So no matter what I used, I contrary to what a lot of people say, I've at least found that if you had even a mid-range card or higher since like the past freaking decade, you could play half of the games in 4K 60 or high refresh 1080p. So I never really ran into this issue.
Yeah, I don't know why I never because that was when I was addicted to Bannerlord when I was staying at your house over the pandemic. And I should have shown you, like, hey, Tom, look how ass this upscaling is.
I wish I would have seen that. So I knew what people were talking about. That would have been fun.
Yeah.
But no. That issue is basically solved by upscalers, right? That if that is his question, which I think you're right, that's what he meant. It's solved now because it's just using a base and interpolating to the final. That's your upscaler. It solves the problem entirely because from the monitor's perspective, it thinks it's 4K.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Alrighty. Let us now move on to story number 2. GPD Win 5 with Strix Halo 395 fully tested. Quoting the Phawx, who, by the way, was just on Broken Silicon and put out an early review with me. So check that out if you haven't yet. Anyways, he says, ultimately, can I recommend the GPD Win 5? Well, I still think it's very much for enthusiasts only, and that's because it's a very expensive handheld. Ultimately, what it comes down to with regard to the price. Now, look, technically, can you achieve the price difference insofar as like a performance difference evening out? Well, the answer is yes, you can. You can achieve double the performance of the ROG Ally X or the MSI Claw 8 and get that for double the price. And you can get 4 to 5 times the performance of a Steam Deck OLED for paying 4 to 5 times the price. But the fact of the matter is you are still paying 4 to 5 times the price. So you could argue it's worth it in terms of price performance, and the performance is there. But it is in ultimate terms still a very expansive handheld to play the same games. We have finally gotten, so there you go. We have finally gotten a proper Strix Halo handheld. And so did friend of the channel, the Phawx, with whom we've discussed, yeah, I've already said that there. Since then, he released his first big full review of it, though. And to bring out the main points, and again, we can't recommend actually watching his review enough, but to go through the main points quickly for the purposes of the show. First of all, at 30 to 35 watts SoC TDP, that is the sweet spot for the Win 5, and it seems that is where Strix Halo really starts to pull quite a bit ahead of Strix Point. And at that power, it can give you 85 minutes of playtime on a full battery. Contrary to what a lot of people were worried about, you can game about as long as the original Steam Deck, at least in terms of AAA gaming time. Performance, though, look, it's tricky with handhelds. Every watt counts. So it's not just about the SoC power, but also the rest of the machine's power usage. In the first review video he did, the Phawx compared it to a Claw 8 with Lunar Lake, the ROG Ally X with Phoenix Point, not the ROG Xbox Ally X, the ROG Ally X, which he hasn't tested yet, and a Steam Deck. And although the Xbox Ally X on its Z2 has not tested, in other tests, the Z2 Extreme performs the same as a Z1, likely due to the limited power. Oof, that's not how that turns out. But the Z2 Extreme might scale better, right? And I know he's still doing more testing on that as well. Anyways, at low power, the Win 5 remains competitive. This is at 15 watts TDP for the Win 5 and 20 watts for the Claw 8 and Ally X. The total system power usage is similar at those SoC power levels, and 15 watts for the Steam Deck. Usually Lunar Lake leads at this low power, but Strix Halo is close, which is impressive for such a massive chip. In other words, to get Strix Halo to not have that much of a performance lead, although I did watch some of his testing, I believe you will still find the occasional game where it doubles performance, but most of the time it won't.
Yeah.
To get to where Strix Halo is nearly the same performance, you've got to go down to like 10 or 15 watts is really what it comes down to, which is kind of surprising, actually. That now at 30 to 35 watts, it absolutely wipes out the competition. Like it really does seem that Strix Point's power band hits the perfect efficiency level at like 25. Adding just 5-10 watts to that can make Strix Halo double the performance of Strix.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that means it scales very effectively from 15 to 50 watts and significantly outperforms and given more power. It offers the best of all worlds in terms of handheld performance, but you will have to pay for it. Sorry, I muddled up a little bit there reading through it. But yeah, look, the point is, I saw examples where like Returnal was getting double the performance. And in fact, I would say anyone, because I know Ace has bragged about having this like 50 watt turbo insane mode. Like, if that's what you're using your ROG handheld for, you should probably sell it and just get a Strix Halo handheld, because in turbo mode, this thing's doing at least double the performance. Now, if you're always limiting it to like 10, 15 watts, yeah, look, I mean, Lunar Lake, it might actually be good there. Certainly Strix Points or Z2 Extreme will be good there. But overall, it just seems the best. It has the best 1080p 120 hertz VRR screen, just like the ROG does right now. It has the same battery life really as the competition, even at like 35 watts. So it seems like that battery pack solution was a good solution, honestly, when all said and done. And certainly if this is going to be your main PC that you dock while you're not gaming on a subway, yeah, I mean, look, it's pretty powerful.
Honestly, and I'm not wrong about this. It's still one of the cheaper ways to get Strix Halo at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like $1,600 to $2,000 or something. So, I mean, and again, further evidence that Strix Halo will eventually be below 2,000 as standard. I think I do think it will be eventually. But what were you going to say?
But no, I mean, I think what he showed is like, yeah, I mean, it has a pretty damn good power band. Like it scales pretty well at all power levels, and even if like at the really low, it's more tiring the MSI claw. I still think there's an argument for it because, okay, so you have like while you're on the subway or whatever, a long-lived battery life thing that's using a comparable energy to an MSI claw if you want to scale down to that. And then hell, you have a gaming laptop or you have a gaming setup PC that you can plug into some dock, and it could also just be your gaming PC, I think. So
and one that if you clock to like 75 watts or whatever the limit is, plug into a TV, I mean, you're getting above PS5 performance probably, or at least around there on the go.
I think there's definitely an argument for this. There's definitely a person that this is for, which I wasn't quite sure if that would be the case when I first saw it. But yeah, Strix Halo is damn good from anywhere from like 15 even to 50 watts. I mean, 15, it's not great anymore, but I don't think you get this to play it at 15 watts, but you can do it.
He wants to test the 385 and see if he can get that to efficiently scale 32 compute units and 8 cores down to 10 watts. He said he'll do that soon. So we'll see what that does. But overall, it just seems like the best handheld besides the Steam Deck. Look, the Steam Deck, last I saw, maybe the sale just ended, actually. I think it might have ended by the time this comes out. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it was $320, and ultimately, because of dev buy-in, optimizing games for it, that's my recommendation for a handheld gaming. I'm sorry, like that's the standard. The standard has a lot of benefits, guys, and if you want, and then the ladder begins. I think he talked about this, like where you justified, oh, but what if I paid more for this one thing here? Oh, the Alienware, oh, the Lenovo, oh, I pay extra for the ROG, and then by now you're up to the Halo. If you go up the performance rungs, you eventually get to Halo. I would say at this point it's like $850 for the Z2 Extreme Lenovo one seems fair. And then this. I can't recommend anything other because the Steam Deck's just so cheap that if you're not going to get something fundamentally better, which in the case of this, it's just ridiculously faster. In the case of the Lenovo one, you also get a pretty nice tablet. That's what I'd recommend, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's that many diminishing returns as far as like price performance goes with a lot of these handhelds. So, I mean, that's kind of great. You just, how much do you want to spend? There's a decent option, I guess, at a lot of those different rungs, and I guess that does make it easier to justify spending more and more money. But I think there's an optimistic way to look at it too. And then the last thing I do have to say though is like the battery pack thing seems so much better than what they were initially discussing. I really don't get it. What a
failure of marketing.
Like, I'm curious if there was like a language barrier issue when they were coming up with that marketing, where it's like it didn't register.
For those who don't know, they said it was like a handheld that comes with
without a battery, and like there was
an
like
external battery, and everyone was like, "What does that mean? I have to carry?" I mean, it seriously sound. And then they led by saying you can plug this into anything in your backpack. So they led by saying external battery, anything in your backpack. My immediate thoughts, and I saw everyone else in the comments saying this, I have to carry a microwave battery in my backpack. What
when you could have
the answer is no. It's the same size as, if that's actually smaller than the ROG handheld, even with the battery. It has a fine battery life for a PC handheld, which means not insane, but it's just easier to swap. And you could use some big, I mean, do I have one of those around here? Let's see. If you wanted to, you could carry one of these big old green things in your backpack. And I mean, this is enough to power my Strix Halo laptop for like an hour or two. Like if you wanted to take this, you probably get 4 hours on this sucker or more.
When they could have just said like swappable, quickly swap batteries to or like detachable battery to double gaming set to like double gaming time on the go or something. They could have said that, and that's what it is. I don't get it, but yeah, I mean, I think at least from what I've seen online takes, it does seem like this is the product to really get GPD out there more than like a niche product. I think there's a lot of interest in this, and that's cool because I mean, GPD's been making cool products for
I like
years
their
now.
laptop handheld hybrids.
Yeah.
Those are really, really cool.
Yeah, and this is definitely one of the more interesting handhelds out there on the market now.
So I don't know. I mean, it looks like a good device. And you know, the things we were worried about really aren't a big deal. It just needs that official Xbox Windows support. Although, to be honest, if I had this, probably just run SteamOS, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, at least if you're going to primarily use this to game, at least dual boot is what I'd recommend. This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB. JLC PCB supports a wide range of PCB materials, including traditional FR4, aluminum, and copper core boards. But beyond these, JLC also specializes in flexible PCBs, offering enhanced versatility for modern electronics. But that's not all. In addition to classic yellow, black, and white PCB substrates, they now provide transparent PCBs that gives a sleek, futuristic design for electronics that want to ditch bulky enclosures and embrace a more transparent circuit board as their foundation. Truly, whether it is EDA software, PCB layout, manufacturing or assembly, or 3D printing, CNC machining, and mechatronic parts, JLC PCB accelerates global hardware innovation. If you want to get any of these products and support Moore's Law is Dead, check out the link in the description to get easy, affordable, and reliable PCB manufacturing. And you can even get a $10 coupon for a Flex PCB right now. So support Moore's Law is Dead by supporting JLC PCB today. AI-generated fish writes in and says, "Hi, Tom. To your knowledge, does anything else use the same CPU chiplets as Strix Halo? If they were to refresh it, would they have to change the packaging to make it for the same socket as Medusa Halo?" Well, it depends. There's multiple sockets. There's a new one, though, that it won't work on, I don't think. If it's truly a one-off product, I don't see why they'd continue producing it. Yeah, look, it could be. I have no evidence that this is coming to anything else. I've long wondered if they could make a budget 6 nanometer IO die for it. These CCDs that doesn't have all the compute units. So you could use this for like budget, Ryzen 10,000 below Zen 6. I don't think that's what they're doing, though. I don't. So it is kind of a bridge product to the next generation of AMD stuff. Like they wanted, they had a plan. They wanted to get a chiplet Mac competitor APU out and have it be competitive when it launches. It was. And I just think moving forward, if you look at what I've seen they're doing with Zen 7, Zen 8, and of course Zen 6 Halo products, there's a more coherent strategy to me, it seems, that shares more lineage with the products on desktop.
Yeah.
But they shared from each other. I think the stuff they were working on for Zen 6 early on in development made its way into Zen 5, and they learned things from Zen 5 Strix Halo that they will use in Zen 6. Well, changing it again. But yeah, I think that that'll we'll see where it goes. Like that is the sort of thing that makes this actually get cheap at some points, like because if they produce a ton and they know it won't be around forever, as we're about to see with the Xbox story coming up, that can actually lead to like I wouldn't be surprised if late next year or even mid next year there are like flash sales going out of business, if you will, sales of Strix Halo products where you might be able to get them for $1,200, what used to be $3,000. Like that could happen because the OEMs know that this is it. We're moving on to the next big things. They're not going to keep making it, so we're done. But it will still be something that will be covered and work well for years. So that's when you'll want to get it. And yeah, I think it's probably more of a stepping stone. I don't know what else, like RDNA 3, right?
Yeah.
Like than it is, this is what they're going to do in the future. Yeah, RDNA 3 is probably a good comparison. They learned a lot from it, but no, RDNA 4 and 5 don't look anything like it. All right, let us move on now to story number 3. AMD Zen 6 design details reaffirmed and more. Recently, High Yield released a video on Strix Halo that took on a life of its own with regards to Zen 6 packaging speculation. And because of irresponsible tech media, some of that speculation was reported uncritically as a fact of some change to Zen 6's design from what this channel has already confirmed again, and reconfirmed again multiple times this year. Look, speculation is fine. It's fun, in fact, but we have higher standards for tech journalism, or we think we should. Normal enthusiasts, even channels like High Yield, who aren't about leaks and advanced info, shouldn't be expected to remember every little leak that we do. Although he is a regular on the channel, so raised an eyebrow when I saw this. But anyways, it's reporters that should strive to know the difference between speculation and true claimed leaks. Indeed, anyone who claims to follow this channel, Moore's Law is Dead, would have seen at least one of our Zen 6 leaks throughout the year that confirmed that the Zen 6 lineup does not use the same methods as Zen 5 Strix Halo. It will use silicon bridges and organic interposers instead. And in fact, we've been saying this since February. Heck, in that video in February, we even leaked that AMD will use SPIL as the OSAT, a specialized packaging company, and UMC to make the bridge die itself. So Strix Halo does not use bridges. So in our unrelenting war on misinformation, though, because this blew up and was, in our opinion, misreported, we started working on a new leak to set the record straight yet again. And hey, at least this false info gave us some new details about Zen 6 and Zen 7 in the process. Now, what can we confirm? We can confirm that, again, Zen 6 uses SPIL's FOEB technology. It's not new, by the way. This is something we could further elaborate on that we didn't before. It's not some new thing. What AMD is using for Zen 6 and its bridge dies is a technology that's been in use by them since MI200. It's not expensive and it's not radical. It's not alien technology, but one that AMD and the industry have a lot of experience with already. In fact, it's far less advanced and cheaper to it's far less advanced than V-Cache and cheaper than Intel's massive silicon interposers that they're using on all client CPUs. So this idea that using SPIL and UMC to make bridge dies for Zen 6, Intel's doing something more expensive for all of their client products. So this isn't a reason to not use it for really anything. And in fact, the entire lineup uses it. That was another thing that we could confirm. It, like, when I say everything, I mean Zen 6 desktop, Zen 6 Halo, our Xbox Magnus, and probably all of the RDNA 5 GPUs. There was some speculation from one of my sources that maybe it can be used as just a booster and they don't need it for like AT4 and AT3, you know, with Magnus being AT2 and AT1 and AT0 being more expensive products. But it's honestly cheap enough. They're probably using this bridge for the entire lineup. Again, dispelling this speculation I saw out there that AMD shouldn't do this with Zen 6 because it would be very expensive. In fact, another thing that was speculated incorrectly is that this could mess with the placement of the V-Cache on the die. And that was another thing I could confirm in the video. The packaging does not limit AMD in placement of V-Cache. In fact, the silicon bridge, much like V-Cache, is so thin it's almost negligible, I'm told, in the space that it takes up. And therefore, they can continue to put the V-Cache below the CCD, meaning it doesn't mess with the cooling on the heatsink on top. And I'll add this on the end here as well. Since posting the video, I have tweeted that follow-up sources confirmed to me since the video came out that, yes, again, Zen 6 does put V-Cache under the CCD. So does Zen 7. So nobody worry about the thermal performance of V-Cache moving forward. Zen 6 and Zen 7 seem to use V-Cache. Nope. Unlike Strix Halo with Zen 5, it seems that Zen 6 and Zen 7 use V-Cache same way Zen 5 seems to, which means we now also have a first look at what V-Cache will look like on Zen 7. Anyways, though, final plug. Make sure you subscribe to Moore's Law Z on YouTube. And you can join the Patreon as well. If you have any questions, Carbon Cry wanted to add that join the Discord and ask him a question. He will explain the difference, as it is actually pretty complicated. And a lot of people in the comments still seem confused. And again, also join because there will be some Zen 7 leaks coming out very soon. And I know more about the V-Cache and its capacity actually than I've let on so far. Wink, wink, nudge. Go on.
I do have a journalism hack though, Tom.
Journalism hack, oh boy.
Instead of keeping track of what you discuss on the regular, just at the end of every article you write, say, and take this with the biggest grain of salt, and end it there.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve of me and yours, not just with reporting on our channel stuff, but reporting on other people's too, where I think it is like there are times you can say take this with a grain of salt. Like, what's a good example? Like something about Zen 8, and if there's a specific thing about it that seems like they're testing it, it's like, we'll take this with a grain of salt because they're testing it. That doesn't mean they'll do it. But if you report on somebody and you're like, here's all of this stuff, I'm going to do a huge write-up that's 8 paragraphs wrong, and then but take it with a grain of salt. Well, then why did you fucking report on it? I mean, what the hell was...
I liked 8 paragraphs wrong. That was fun.
Yeah, it's
I don't think that was intentional, but good Freudian slip there.
Don't put take this with a grain of salt. You should just end it more like, the reason we're reporting on this is we think it looks interesting for this reason, but of course it's not confirmed until it's final. That's much better than take everything I just told you to read with a grain of salt. Ergo, why did I even report on this?
Well, you know what, Tom? You know those 8 paragraphs I just wrote? Here. Print it out, use it to wipe your ass next time you have to.
Sometimes that feels like that's what they're doing. Why don't they just say, thanks for the click, we don't believe in anything. Thanks,
you know
guys.
What?
Yeah.
Thanks for the click might just be a more honest thing. Just say,
just say, take this with a grain of salt. Thanks for the click.
And then just end it with 2 middle fingers.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's what they should do. That'd be the more honest thing. But anyways, Dan, what do you think about all of this hoopla that happened last week?
I mean, the hoopla itself sounds pretty fun. I'm glad you got some more info, though, out of it. And I'm glad they're not going to some new foreign, super expensive technology, especially in light of tariffs, because I don't want things to be more and more expensive.
Yeah, we'll see. And there's also rumors out there. Well, I'll save that for later in the wrap up. I'm not sure how valid they are. That like eventually AMD could make some of this stuff, maybe at Intel in the United States or too. So, but yeah, the point is like the big broad strokes. Besides saying no, there's not a sea of wires, and it's not like, and that's what really annoyed me too. Is a lot of the reporting on High Yield's video was like Zen 6 gets an upgrade, as if this was some change to the design. Even though I think they've already taped out Venice or something. Like, no, guys. They're not changing the design. The design for Zen 6 is locked in. In fact, Zen 7, from what I know, is almost locked in. So nothing's changing. This isn't it's locked in, bro. Yeah, it's like nothing's changing. It still uses bridge dies. But because I had to dispel this rumor, we learned, hey, Zen 7 uses V-Cache the same way, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to Zen 6 doing it the same way as Zen 5. I never explicitly asked my sources. I just kind of assumed it was still on the bottom, but now we know that for sure. And in addition to that, it seems like they all use bridge dies, and don't worry about it adding cost. The reason they're doing it isn't just to get more performance. It's because this is a proven thing they can do with non-TSMC manufacturers that charge less, and they have done on a lot of products for a very long time. So that's good to know that, again, if Zen 6 costs an arm and a leg, it's because AMD can charge an arm and a leg. It's not because they can't be competitive with Nova Lake and crush them in price performance if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
All right. No News writes in and says, will APUs eventually take over desktop and bring an end to do it yourself? Well, those are two different things. My answer, if I have one word, is no. But a nuanced answer, I think there will always be some powerful dedicated card, at least 1 or 2 dies that are stronger than the APUs. But more and more is going to move to APUs. You get more performance, massive efficiency benefits. The smaller you get a node, the more making everything else outside of the silicon itself, the main die, closer together helps performance. And that's going to lead to more and more and more APUs being more and more cost effective. But that doesn't end do it yourself either.
No, I mean, one, I think they would probably just start selling more APUs to DIY. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe mini PCs will just take over the world. I don't know.
Even in that case, like Mini's forum, and I hope I think I'll be able to test this. Who knows? Maybe I'll decide to use this as my motherboard with a dedicated graphics card. That would be an interesting build. With Zen 5, it's really Zen 5 Plus. And Strix Halo is incredible.
Yeah, and maybe it leads to more popularity with like. Why can't I think of eGPUs?
All I'm saying is just get a motherboard with a built-in APU that doesn't kill do-it-yourself. You still choose your SSD, your cooler, your case, the amount of RAM you want, probably, for some of them at least. Not maybe the ones where it's soldered on, but some of them will let you upgrade the RAM. And who knows, maybe there will be an interesting system whereby there's just a larger... This would not be soon. Maybe this would be like AM6 or something, which I believe is rumored to have like a massive sized pack, like LGA 2100, I think is the rumor or something. So it's quite a bit bigger than the 1718, I believe, that is used in AM5. And let's say they go to like LGA 2100 with Zen 8 or something. And what this allows for is like not Threadripper sized APUs, but like maybe half the size of Threadripper. So still like double AM5. And maybe it just comes with RAM on it enough. And then you can add as much RAM as you want. That's third level RAM or something. And that's what you choose. You choose the APU and the amount of fast RAM you want. And then from there, you choose how much extra VRAM, your SSD, and then your motherboard. Like, I could see a few that doesn't kill do-it-yourself though. You're just removing one component. And I think I did a video about this many years ago. I'll try to look it up to see if Gerard could throw it on screen. But like, where I outlined, I mean, go look at PC builds from 2005. They're like, here's my network card, my Ethernet card, my sound card, my graphics card, my motherboard, my you had like 10 different components. Now it's motherboard, graphics, CPU, cooler, RAM, SSD, motherboard, and like case. It's like it's less than 10. It used to be like 15 or something, you know. So what this means is just one less thing to worry about. You're still going to get a motherboard. You'll choose your CPU plus GPU together. Maybe you'll choose the amount of RAM, and it'll be dynamic because now it's shared by both. That'd be fun. And you'll choose an SSD and a case and a power supply, and it'll just be smaller. It'll be a smaller PC. And then there will be builds with Threadripper where you get a high-end GPU still. It
could kill the ATX full tower, Tom.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, Strix Halo motherboards, we'll see. You know, like some of them, they would be much, much, much less necessary. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But ITX is small, so I would still think micro ATX is the way to go.
Although
the industry's hell-bent on us not using it.
Or big NZXT Phantom wants the ATX full tower to never die.
I will say that.
Although I think the NZXT Phantom doesn't exist anymore, if I'm remembering correctly.
I will say, me and you have always hated giant desktops, and it will be hilarious if we're in an APU future and there's this big gaming PC and it's just like little motherboard with the CPU is like
that would look stupid. No one, I don't think anyone would.
You don't think anyone would do that? I mean, it's already looking. I mean, half of these. Speaking of aquarium,
or maybe
half of these cases look like an empty aquarium at this point.
Or maybe custom liquid cooling solutions will just get dumber. Like I have 35
half the cases just
I have 35 feet of PVC pipe in this case.
Yeah, maybe losing the graphics card will free them up to have a 2-gallon reservoir of coolant.
Or maybe they'll just start turning them into full fish tanks, Tom. That would be cool.
I have seen those before. Good luck. I'm not going to do that. Techno writes him. He says, with MDS1, that's Medusa 1, the most direct successor to Kraken and Strix Point, just so everyone knows. He says it will have up to 22 cores. Again, so that's a 3-nanometer IO die with 8 compute units for graphics, but then it also has 4 3-nanometer Zen 6 cores, 4 3-nanometer Zen 6C cores, and 2 Zen 6 low power cores. And then you can add a 2-nanometer 12-core chiplet to it. He says with that, the ability to go all the way up to 22 cores technically with this Medusa Point, what is the point of Gator Range, the successor to Fire Range, and what was the Dragon Range? You know, like the basically putting desktop CPUs in a laptop. Technically what me and your motherboard use. Me and you, Dan, have a Dragon Range. Dragon Range. I have a Dragon Range X, technically, motherboard.
Ooh, fancy.
It's like, what's the point of this? You know, having a 24 core, if this is 22, or I guess would it be 24 or 26, depending on if it gets low power cores, I guess. But, well, so I actually thought about this, and I was thinking this for a while, Techno. Like, there's an argument here. This could make the range products a little obsolescent, not obsolete, just not really worth it most of the time. And to a degree that might be true. But if that is true, I think that's more just people don't need more multi-threading. I don't think it's because it won't be stronger, because I actually like added it up and crunched some numbers. And think about it. It's not 22 versus 24 to 26 cores, depending on if the range gets low power cores. It's 12 2-nanometer cores on one side, and plus 4 3-nanometer, plus 4 3-nanometer C, plus low power. So no, you're really looking at, if it's 20, like the range will have 24 all 2 nanometer, maybe TSMC N2X Extreme 7 gigahertz, 24 cores. That's going to be way faster actually in multi-threading than one of those 12 cores, and then like another like 8 that are on 3 nanometer and half of them are C. I could genuinely see Gator Range being 60% or more faster in multi-threading actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good argument. I don't think there's gonna, with 12 cores on a CCD, there's gonna be that much of a penalty for like gaming, but still, if it clocks faster, I don't know. The Range products have, the Range is like their ultra performance cores.
Like this will
guess.
come with a
Or
dedicated
their ultra
GPU.
performance CPUs for laptop, not cores. But
yeah, you know, and so again, think about that, right? Again, so they both get 12 2 nanometer cores. Yes. But on the other half of one of them is 12 more 2 nanometer cores, possibly hitting 7 gigahertz. And then on the other half of the other one is only 4 more full cores on 3 nanometer. So these are already like 10, 20% weaker than the other ones. And then 4 more C 3 nanometer cores. These are probably, I mean, half the performance at best as the 2 nanometer N2X cores. The math I did in genuinely suggested 60 to 80% more performance, depending on what you're doing. If you really crunch,
I mean, that makes sense.
But then think about Strix Point versus Fire Range. Strix Point has 12 cores. What's the point of Strix Point if Fire Range has 16 cores? Well, you have only 4 Zen 5 cores in Strix, and then 8 C versus another 12 full cores with Fire Range. Actually, the difference in multi-threading performance from Medusa Point to Gator Range is probably pretty similar to Strix Point to Fire Range. So my answer is it's increasingly niche, not because it's almost caught up. It's because I don't know if anyone even needs 10 cores, let alone 22. And then you go to 24 mega cores. You know, so I think they're just treading water, actually. Maybe it's catching up a little, but I don't think it's as much of a difference as it is to now as some people would think.
Yeah, I will say consumer awareness could become an issue eventually if they keep going down these two different paths, as they could on paper look very similar, though, with 22 versus 24 cores.
Yeah, but I don't think most people pay that much attention. I think what
Probably
people
not.
will see is this one has 22 cores, and then I don't know what it will be called. I guess AI.
Oh, true. They will have different. Yeah. And
you'll have the AI 475 or something. AI 9
495
475. That will be the 22 core. And then you'll have the, I actually don't know even what they'll call the non-Halo version of it, but like maybe that is going to get confusing. But conceivably, they will say the AI 9 495, not with the CUs though. And they'll say, yeah, that one's 22 cores, and they'll say 24 cores, and they'll say this is a huge upgrade. But yeah, look, if the cost difference in a spec sheet is like $500, there will be people going, why is this so much more expensive? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they do that. But fundamentally, I don't think it will be that hard to explain 24 desktop cores versus a mix of all these other little cores. I mean,
I don't think it's
4 different types of cores in Medusa Point.
I don't think it will be like a complete nightmare to explain it, but just seeing like at Best Buy 22 core versus 24 core, that almost looks the same.
Yeah. AI generated fish writes in. Yeah, I mean it will. I don't know. It will be confusing. I agree. Actually, now I'm thinking about it. We'll see. AI generated fish writes in. It says, Tom, in your broken silicon with the Phawx, you mentioned AMD pushing Intel out of laptop. Between server, console, and consumer desktop CPU and GPU, could they possibly supply the market with enough chips? I can't tell if you're trolling because I feel like this is a rant I've gone on a few times. But the answer is no, they couldn't. And that's why they can't possibly take the entire laptop market in a single year. Over 4 years from now, yes, AMD could supply 50% of the market easily. I think they could get there. They're already working, they're already one of TSMC's best partners, if not their best, right up there with Apple. And they continue to get more and more share of that. And if they, that's the funny thing is the more momentum they get, the more they can justify going to Intel. Like you could see them going, okay, we're at 50, 60% laptop market share. Now we're not threatened anymore. Screw it. Yeah, we'll make the next 10% of our market share at Intel for the budget chips or something. Like, so, yeah, I mean, like, can they get to 100% now? No, but like over 5 years, yeah, they can get to 50 or 60. They have the capacity to do that. Techno writes in and says, is the media die AMD has built for RDNA 5 being built on Samsung 4 nanometer? It would explain what they're doing with the supply they've reserved, supposedly. Yeah, I don't know much about the Samsung things. Call me crazy, but to my memory, there is a Samsung AMD rumor every 4 months, and every time it hasn't happened. The only thing that has happened is I think Samsung like licensed their RDNA tech for their integrated graphics. That's about it. Right.
Well,
do you remember this too, right? There's like always something in the wrap up about something at Samsung.
Yeah, and I would bet AMD and Samsung are communicating regularly because they're two tech giants that would conceivably make a contract with each other.
So them talking at all isn't news. It was news when I think I reported in 21 or 2020 that Intel was talking with NVIDIA for like long term, maybe we make graphics cards there, but that's not the same as like AMD or NVIDIA talking to Samsung about something. They're always talking to Samsung, guys, and now even the Intel isn't even that big a news too.
Yeah, even if they don't always win the contract.
No, they rarely do, it turns out. But one thing I want to say to you, Techno, here about the actual answer, because so far I basically said I don't know, I don't really care, but well, it's a harsh, but I feel like that's what I kind of said. Kerry no Sugata, contributor to Moore's Law is Dead, saw this question and helping prepare the script and pointed out, like, it would be unlikely they're just gonna go to Samsung for this if they need to use TSMC for any of these media dies, because the cost to design at multiple foundries is like really expensive, and unless it's extra worth it, which it has been before, like it was worth it to NVIDIA to put the 1050 Ti and maybe something else on Samsung, because that was their budget chips. They could mass produce infinitum. Thank you, Dan. But that led to them, getting ready for Ampere. But that's why. And like AMD used Global Foundries for their IO dies, but Global Foundries used to be part of AMD. So like they had a sweetheart deal here. That's why it made sense. The second they're out of the Global Foundries sweetheart deal contracts, boom, everything to TSMC, because it's just cheaper to keep working with the same people. So I would suggest the media die is probably made at TSMC. Although, I mean, we'll see. I mean, you could see them doing it at Samsung. But honestly, why wouldn't you just do it at Global Foundries at that point? Couldn't you do the HDMI out dies there? And AMD's has a long history of working with them. They still do technically work with them making older products. So I would almost see them go with them more so. Like, why Samsung 4 nanometer? Why they're most cutting edge? I would think, you go to Global Foundries 10 nanometer or Samsung 8 for the media die. But who knows? I could be wrong. I'm not following this. I wouldn't assume that's what you would want to use Samsung for. If you're going to go to Samsung, I would assume it might be for something like, I think, like Soundwave or some variant where it's its own thing. Sure. That's what I would assume. All right. Let us now finally get off of this darn AMD news and move on to story number 4. Intel Panther Lake fully leaked. Speaking of upcoming APUs with fancy advanced packaging, this channel also leaked details of Intel's Panther Lake in the previous news cycle. Our information, alongside information from other leakers like Jenkins on Twitter, give us a fairly clear picture of Intel's next effort to hold on to the laptop market. So, anyways, let's get into it. Panther Lake is composed of 3 tiles. The first is a 114 millimeter squared SoC/CPU tile on an Intel 18A with 4. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head was it Coyote? Not Coyote. Cougar Cove. It was 4 Cougar Cove P cores, 8, I believe, if I remember off the top of my head, Darkmont E cores, and then 4 Darkmont low power cores. And then it also has a at least 50 TOPS NPU, an LPDDR5X controller, and media and display blocks. That's the first die. Then there is a platform die, 49 millimeters squared on TSMC N6 with all sorts of I/O, PCIe, USB, and Wi-Fi, etc. And then finally, there is a graphics tile that is only 55 millimeters squared on TSMC N3E. This will have 12 Celestial XE cores, a new architecture over Battle Mage, and one that should get a ton of driver support going forward because it could be their de facto last one. However, the positioning of Panther Lake is admittedly a bit odd. It is mainly a Lunar Lake replacement, and yet is designed to scale to higher TDPs from 15 to 45 watts, pushing out some of Arrow Lake's laptop range in devices that want to be extra premium. For those who don't remember, let me add this, by the way. Panther Lake originally was going to go on desktop with 8 big cores, 16 little cores, and it should be launched. It was going to be launching this year, like now, actually, but they canceled it because they didn't get good performance in super high power consumption levels. And so that's why you get this thing that like originally was envisioned as being a Lunar Lake successor, but then a desktop variant. But then they can't. That's why it does scale higher, right? And then in terms of performance, Intel expects Panther Lake to beat Arrow Lake in multi-threading. A large part of this is due to how good its LPE cores are, and it's also supposed to get similar single threading, and despite being clocked lower, which is unfortunate. I've heard that it is clocked lower than Arrow Lake, so feels a little bit like a Meteor Lake situation in that regard. But the point is that it should be a double-digit performance uplift at same TDP as Lunar Lake. Basically, it's meant to bring Arrow Lake performance to Lunar Lake power consumption. This will heavily depend on the LPE core usage, too, to get it there in terms of multi-threading. We say that because basically Meteor Lake and Arrow Lake don't use their LPE cores. I even reached out to... who did I reach out to? I reached out to Jared's Tech and Just Josh, who confirmed, along with Kerry No Sugata at Moore's Law is Dead, that whether it's Meteor Lake or Arrow Lake, you can't get the LPE cores to do anything. I'm not even sure why they're there. Like, they really do seem completely useless. Now, that's not true with Lunar Lake. Lunar Lake has 4 LPE cores that are used like real cores. And again, that's why it can be misleading to see like, oh, it has 4 low power cores and then 12 other cores. No, this time it's like 16 cores. It really should beat Arrow Lake. Moving on, though. The GPU should beat Lunar Lakes by 15 to 30% as well at the same TDP. So there you go. In one regards, it's impressive that they might bring Arrow Lake CPU performance to Lunar Lake power consumption, and then at the same time, at that same power, boost graphics up to 30%. But I have to say, for a new architecture with a 50% larger design than its predecessor, that isn't very impressive, especially now with the caveat of once drivers mature for the graphics so far. We've not heard great things about Celestial's drivers up until now, and Intel has a track record of failure in delivering good GPU software. Actually, on that note, just don't forget that Panther Lake's always been a troubled project, whether it's the cancellation of the desktop to the Celestial rumors. So it should be better than Lunar Lake and Arrow Lake, but at least right now, OEMs are not amazed or enthusiastic. However, as reported in the video, this could be because Intel now has a reputation problem after forcing OEMs to buy up Alder Lake to get Raptor Lake. And then once they got Raptor Lake supply, Raptor Lake had failure issues. And then Meteor Lake came out, missed promises. Arrow Lake came out, missed promises, while AMD was cementing their dominance and performance. There's a chance that the apprehension to be excited about Panther Lake is simply that the OEMs just don't believe in Intel anymore. So we will have to see. But do note, if Panther Lake does bring Arrow Lake performance to Lunar Lake while upping GPU power, it will not be just competing with Strix or even Gorgon Point, which Gorgon Point could be 10-20% faster than Strix. It will also probably be competing with Strix Halo laptops that have dropped in price. And before Nova Lake's out, Medusa Point might have even launched as well. So hopefully it's good, but whether it is or it isn't, it will have plenty of competition from AMD next year as well. All right, what do you think, Dan?
Oh, yeah, like you say, Lunar Lake, Arrow Lake at Lunar Lake TDP sounds like it will be conceivably good in most classes of laptop. I would say up to like not desktop replacements, I guess, would probably be where this gasses out. But the problem I have, like you said, is this is 50% bigger, and what worries me with Intel is the only thing they seem to be able to do to actually squeeze out more performance from any of their stuff is make it more complicated
and huge
and bigger, bigger, and that makes it more expensive. So their choices are what or hopefully their choices aren't lose money on this or make something that's too expensive for what it is.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is they don't expect it to really cost more than Lunar Lake because it doesn't use require on-package memory anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, they think that it could be about the same or slightly more expensive than Lunar Lake, while just being flat out better in every way. So there's hope. There is hope there. On paper, it could be good. And I will say, again, Groundhog's Day, every single Intel launch, what do I say is the number one thing? Give me good graphics drivers at launch. Otherwise, I do not care about this product.
Yeah, because
you are not going to use this with a dedicated. Well, it might actually be paired with some dedicated GPUs, but predominantly this is meant to be an ultrabook premium thing. And if you get 30% more performance, by the way, than Lunar Lake, and it's consistent, I mean, look, you could be looking at like 2060 max Q performance. You could be like, not 3060 laptop performance, but you could be getting to where this really does finally, the promise they've been saying they haven't hit yet, feels like kind of a dedicated graphics card built in while having Lunar Lake power consumption. That actually sounds awesome to me, but show me the perfect drivers at launch.
Yeah, I mean, it's 50% more cores, right? For
the XE cores, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, if drivers work well, could have great integrated.
Yeah. And again, the CPU seems solid as well. So,
yeah.
Again, hopefully it's good. But again, hopefully the drivers work well. And hopefully this thing actually launches, when they say it does. Like, I guess we'll just give them a mulligan because we know it's not going to really launch in December. But let's hope it's actually fully out by the end of January or something.
It will be on shelves in December, and by on shelves they mean they will have called Best Buy and say, we'll be shipping this to you eventually. It's the new definition of on shelves.
Well, speaking of products that might not be on shelves by the time we get to December, let us move on to story number 5. This piece of content is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. CDkeyoffer.com is really the best place to go to get reasonable pricing on Microsoft software, whether that's Windows 11 operating systems or Office products like the ones that I installed on this new Strix Halo laptop that I was testing while I made this ad. You see, I actually use CDkeyoffer.com. I've used them many times. My family members use them. My friends use them when they're building new PCs. And that's because they've been a reliable sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for years now. And so if you're looking to get, say, a new laptop, or you just finally want to get a legitimate key of one of the latest Office products on your desktop during back to school, use CDkeyoffer.com's offer codes Broken Silicon to save 25% on all Microsoft products. And then actually you can also use offer code DieShrink to save 3% on everything else on their website, like games as well. Once again, I want to thank CDkeyoffer.com for sponsoring this content, like all the other content that they've sponsored, and for making it easy for me to get a good price on Office on my new laptop. The Xbox continues to collapse story. Is Xbox Magnus canceled? All right, so quite a lot here. Starting with a quote from The Verge. Microsoft is raising the price of its Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription again and rebranding some of its Xbox Game Pass plans. Starting today, Game Pass Ultimate will be priced at $30 per month instead of $20, a 50% increase. Microsoft's attempting to justify the price hike with a variety of upgrades across all of its Xbox Game Pass tiers. Look, at this point, let's just call a spade a spade. Xbox clearly doesn't know what they're doing anymore, nor even what they should be doing. At this point, they seem to be flailing blindly in the dark, from launching $1,000 consoles, which is just a PC with an Xbox sticker on it, and merely 1 year after Phil Spencer said they would not, that $1,000 consoles were a bad idea, to hiking prices of the already poorly selling Xbox Series and seemingly not being manufactured new anymore consoles. And now there's a story of hiking the price of Game Pass. So here's the tiers. Xbox Core is now Essentials, and it actually costs the same as it used to and will actually get more games. They will also get access to some games in Xbox Cloud. Standard is now Premium and costs the same as it did before and will have more games. It also includes full access to Xbox Cloud, all Xbox published games, except for Call of Duty, of course, because that would bankrupt them if they gave that away for free. And it will come to the premium tier 1 year after release. Or their games will, their Xbox games will, first party.
Mm-hmm.
And then the issue is the Ultimate tier. That one keeps the same name, Ultimate, but changes the price by $10. It does offer more games, all Xbox published games on day one access still, and Xbox Cloud with improved 1440p resolution streaming. But oof, that price hike, that is what everyone is focusing on, and that's the narrative Xbox allowed to take hold today. Price hikes and seeming ambivalence to actually selling a product, be it consoles, games, or the subscription service once hailed as the future of Xbox, if not the future of gaming in general. I don't know. Maybe the future is free cloud gaming with ads. By the way, that's what I always thought the point of streaming games should be, the fact that you don't have to buy the game and can stream it instantly, but maybe it has ads. Seems like they're finally catching on to that. Oh, and by the way, we have seen recent reports that Xbox is also killing off all hardware. Allegedly, the way reporters are reported on this, Magnus as well. Although, again, I don't know if this is a high yield situation where they're taking a part of a thing and turning it into another thing. But I will say I've noticed a lot of people bought into the rumors that all Xbox hardware is being killed off instantly, because it seems like Costco and Sam's Club are both dumping Xbox stock. I mean, look, I don't recommend Xbox anymore. I'd worry that what you buy now could become a paperweight in a few years. But there's Xbox consoles I thought I saw in clearance aisles. Yeah, I'm looking. Xbox Series X 1 terabyte, $280. Series S, $180. So if you were going to get one, despite the price increases, there are retailers in the U.S. giving these away for hundreds less than they probably paid to stock them, actually. Seeing this, I don't blame people for seeing the rumors that Xbox future hardware is canceled. But here's what I will say. I reached out to a bunch of sources, and a couple of them got back to me. One of them basically said, last I heard, their Xbox Magnus is still happening, and they have a contract that would cost Microsoft a ton if they canceled it. So that's probably coming out. But that person did caveat that was from months ago. So I don't know. This other person here, an AMD engineer, I want to read a quote from them that Gerard will put on screen for a new leak here. So this person says, as far as I know, and this is an AMD engineer, Xbox Magnus is still full steam ahead. And he says, we were literally discussing next steps in a progress update on Friday, October the 3rd. However, I would caution that this Magnus APU is whatever Xbox wants to call it. It was originally called an Xbox project, but who knows? Maybe that means a PC console hybrid in 2027, or even a literal gaming PC APU that just is an Xbox in name only. Meaning, I don't know what these other leakers out there, some of them I've never heard of their names, so I don't know who they are. I don't know if they're just reporting on something that I already kind of confirmed with NX Gamer. By the way, check out that Broken Silicon, where we already said we think Xbox Series production is over. And I've been saying that for months, so that's not new. I believe that is over if you look at what they're doing. But when it comes to next gen stuff, I mean, they're launching the handheld in a week or two. That's not canceled. And now, is that a true Xbox handheld? No. And could Xbox Magnus just be a gaming PC? Sure. I actually think I might do a big leak on it a few days after this video comes out. We'll see. Make sure you're subscribed. But so far, it does not sound like Magnus is canceled. Like, I literally pushed back with some of these sources, and one of them was like, do you want me to send you the meeting notes? Like, we're literally talking about the work we're going to do. Like, so as of the most recent it could be when we're recording, which is Sunday, the last work day was Friday, they're literally talking next steps on design work. So, or finishing up, really, probably. So, actually, he did say what the subject was that they're working on, but I'm not going to say it for obvious reasons. So, there you go. I don't know. So, I don't know where you even want to go with this, Dan. I mean, it has just been complete chaos at Microsoft, from the dumbest messaging I've heard from their leadership to like Costco giving away Xboxes just so it doesn't take up space anymore, Game Pass nonsense, to now rumors that no future Xbox hardware, although what I can confirm is at least Magnus should come out. What do you think, Dan?
I mean, as far as hardware goes, I'd be surprised if Magnus was canceled. I mean, I think I've said it before. I wouldn't be surprised if whatever they call the Magnus Xbox is the last Xbox console. or it gets like blended in with their like Surface brand or something like that. I could see that happening at like, oh, maybe we try to go with a desktop Surface too or something now. But I don't know. It's gonna come out, and it's probably not gonna come out in huge numbers if they're reading the room correctly, because I doubt many people want to buy it. Then as far as Game Pass goes, I don't have that much to say that I'm sure a million people haven't already said. Yeah, increasing the price for a product as you're flailing and failing to actually get to where you want to in the market with it doesn't seem like a great way to get people to keep adopting it. But I guess this is their way of trying to squeeze the rag that is the Xbox brand.
Yeah, what I will say is if Xbox Magnus is canceled, or the only reason it would be is if they are seeing such a precipitous collapse, like if it's a war at the front lines, that it's time for just a full retreat, and they're okay just burning a ton of money in a contract with AMD and getting rid of Magnus. And it's because they don't want to focus on anything Xbox. I will say, though, if Xbox Magnus is canceled, that is like a full collapse of the front lines in a war situation, in my opinion, where I wouldn't even bet on Game Pass being around for more than a few years, except for slowly becoming a streaming service, which I could see that happening. I want to be clear. With the way Xbox is going lately, I could see Magnus being canceled. I could see them becoming basically a streaming with ad service that's a husk of its former self. Sure. I could see that. Having said that, I do feel like that's I don't have the numbers at Microsoft, so I don't know how bad it is. I feel like that's getting a bit ahead of yourself in negativity there. I think that they need a bridge generation, and that's how I see Xbox Magnus. I think, yes, the Series S and the X are not being produced anymore, most likely. There's a dozen videos you could watch or podcasts you could listen to where we brought up why that would be. NX Gamer is a good one. Go listen to that episode from this year. But I believe that doesn't mean they're not making something else, and that something else is probably a bridge console. Xbox Magnus would be something where the handheld they're about to launch is the beta for some SteamOS-like function for Windows. Once that's perfected by 2027, they launch Xbox Magnus, which boots into that and just runs Windows and relies on Xbox Play Anywhere. Maybe they'll have some pseudo function to play a lot of your old Xbox games. And then that's the last generation. And it's the last generation because it also works as a PC. So any game you buy on it is also going to work on PC. Like that's that forward compatibility thing. In that way, they can just wash their hands and say, we have the bridge console for the 10 to 30 million diehard Xbox fans, where we're going to like force them to migrate to PC, but in a way that doesn't screw them over. I think that'd also be a very attractive device. I think that'd be very silly for them to not do that. And everything I'm hearing, again, everybody, is that they have not canceled Xbox Magnus, and I don't think they will or should, because it would be a good bridge offering, a peace offering to their fans for leaving the console space. But the best peace offering you can hope for, which is basically giving you something the Dreamcast fans never got, a bridge to a future generation where you don't feel screwed over. So I still think they should do it. Having said that, I don't know. I mean, I don't bet on any. I mean, Xbox is doing stuff that that's worse than I would have expected. And people called me a hater. So I don't really know that they won't cancel something.
Well, the Xbox does need it, or not Xbox now. Microsoft in general needs to work with some urgency, I think, because, like you call it, a bridge to a better future. And I think also on that is their other gaming ecosystem, because Microsoft has two separate gaming ecosystems. Windows, I think, is also. I don't think I would bet less money on this happening, but like. There's a future where Xbox becomes, Windows, becomes diminished as like the main PC ecosystem for gaming if SteamOS keeps taking off, or Linux, other distros of Linux just become more and more viable as people get more and more frustrated with Windows, because Windows is also frustrating as shit, especially as everybody's pissed at them end-of-lifing Windows 10, I would say pretty prematurely. At least as far as adoption for Windows 11 goes.
I mean,
they I think they need an offering for both. They need a future for Xbox as they have to wind down Xbox as a brand, because I think the 20-year experiment is over, I guess. Like, I think they need to start winding it down as a brand, and they need to fold what still works about Xbox into Windows to make it more appealing to gamers, as Windows pisses people off more and more.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they don't launch an Xbox Magnus, they should pack up the whole brand, because I can't tell you how pissed their fans will be.
Yeah.
I think that's how I'll leave it. Techno writes in, do we think that Xbox Series X will reach $1,200 before we get the PS6? And do we think Magnus Xbox will be $1,500? Not sure about the Magnus price. Too early for me to really say either way. I will say, seeing Costco and Sam's Club give away the Xbox Series X for $280, I'm not so worried. I'm more worried there just won't be an Xbox anywhere at all. And so that could make Sony charge too much for the next gen PlayStation.
Yeah.
Having said that, that's such an interesting question of a hypothetical. Is it worse for our hope for fair Nintendo and Steam Deck 2 and PS6 pricing? Is it worse for us as consumers if there's no Xbox, so they don't even compare themselves, or if there is a $1,000 Series X? I think it's worse if there's a $1,000 Series X.
Probably, but at a certain point, I don't know. I think it's just going to be less and less of a thing they account for, because who cares?
They're probably already not, honestly, accounting for what Xbox is doing. So, Techno, I don't think there will be, because I don't think there will be Xbox for sale anymore. Give it 2 years. Jensen Wang, all will be NVIDIA writes and says, how high would the odds have to be for you to bet 100,000? Is it 10,000? Okay, so I'm not ruined. To bet $10,000 that yes, Microsoft will make all of their published games accessible only through Game Pass, and you can only outright actually own Microsoft games on non-Microsoft stores like eShop or the PlayStation Store. I bet that now, because we've already said Call of Duty won't be on it, and I count that. So I think I don't know what they're going to do with Game Pass long term, but I could totally see it being Game Pass is you pay a subscription to stream all these games, but you don't own them, and then if you want to buy them and download them, you have to pay money through their store. I just think when you say them removing, right, they're soft removing day one access unless you pay $30 a month. That's half a game a month. I don't buy 6 games a year. That's ridiculous. Like, I don't think that tier is going to be very popular. So all intents and purposes, it's you don't get day one anymore, and they're kind of phasing that out is the way I'm reading the room. Would you agree?
Yeah, it doesn't seem sustainable unless they go crazy and just say $60 a month, you're buying a game every month.
Because that's what it's going to, I think that's what they wanted. I think they wanted at least $50 a month, and they wanted to own half of the games media and just assume everyone thought they had to buy it. And I think what they're learning is if you have to pay even half a game a month, as we've seen from the mass cancellations out there right now, like literally, I should say this, the Game Pass, I believe, website froze because of how many people were canceling their subscription. So think about that, everybody. I just think when you like, well, that's what they wanted. They thought they could own half the games industry and then use that to have everyone think they need to pay $30 a month, and then it would become 40 and then 50. And then it becomes 70 probably. And you'd be paying the equivalent of a game a month anyways, because that's how these fucking companies work. And what they found is no one wants that. What people want to own their games, and no one's going to pay that much. And so I think they're going to phase out day one, if anything. Dead AI writes in and says, for the Game Pass situation, I think it was inevitable. The previous prices are not sustainable financially, so they eventually would have had to have made changes anyways. Yeah. So me and you've been saying the whole time, Dan. And by the way, credit to calling it Sacred Symbols, who has been very aggressive about this as well. Angel of Cake writes in, with Microsoft incapable of going 2 weeks without shooting themselves in the foot, should we just announce the PS6 is the winner of the next console war?
I would have bet that.
I would have bet that years ago, man.
Out, so
yeah. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have bet it like a lot of money, but like I would have bet by 23 that like we already knew how this was going.
Yeah,
2 years ago we knew. What was the first? Honestly, the first canary in the gold mine, the first canary in the coal mine for me was the horrible late, so like sustained support that Halo Infinite got. Like Halo Infinite was, by all intents and purposes, a highly regarded game, and a lot of old school Halo people flocked to the online, and the support for it was jack shit. I mean, I that for me was, oh, Microsoft doesn't have long-term plans for Xbox. If Halo Infinite, look at the amount of DLC they're pouring into Helldivers. It wasn't even getting a fourth of that. And yeah, that would have been around 23 where me and you were like, where's the support, guys? And so
Yeah.
I think we could have called this a while ago. Jensen Wing, all will be in video, writes in yet again and says, what do you think of Xbox fanboys online promising to boycott all Microsoft products? What will they do without Bing and Microsoft Edge? I have seen but joking aside, I have seen the boycott suggestions, and it's like, I don't know about all Microsoft, what that really means, but I will say,
killing
yeah, I
Excel.
mean, like, but if you're gonna say I don't like the price increases, I don't like the direction Xbox is going, and you're canceling Game Pass, then yeah, I mean, look, that's the only way these companies learn. I think that's what we're learning even when it comes to politics right now. Is like the only way to affect change is to vote with your wallet. The money dries up, the thing you don't like dries up. So, I mean, if I will say though at this point, if everyone cancels Game Pass at once, I just think they pack up Xbox anyways. So,
Yeah.
But again, I don't know that wasn't going to happen anyway. So, I don't know. I like, if you don't want it, don't buy it. In terms of boycotting Microsoft, it just feels like there's all this momentum and it's just going in a direction it's going in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whatever that ends up being. All righty. Let us now get to the final story with story number 6. EA Games bought by Saudi Arabia Jared Kushner and other backers in a $55 billion deal, making this similar to the Activision deal. From an EA press release first. Electronic Arts Inc., a global leader in interactive entertainment, today announced that it has entered into a definitive agreement to be acquired by an investor consortium. The consortium, they quoted it, comprised of PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners in an all-cash transaction that values EA at an enterprise value of approximately $55 billion. The transaction positions EA to accelerate innovation and growth to build the future of entertainment. The transaction will be funded by a combination of cash from each of PIF, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners, as well as rollover of PIF's existing stake in EA, constituting an equity investment of approximately $36 billion and $20 billion worth of debt financing, fully and solely committed by JP Morgan Chase Bank NA, $18 billion of which is expected to be funded at close. So, speaking of another gaming giant whose decision rarely makes any sense, EA is going private in terms of equity. Well, not as massive as the Xbox acquisition of Activision for $75 billion. $55 billion is certainly nothing to sneeze at. The worrying bit financially, though, is that this is a leveraged buyout, meaning the company being purchased is taking out debt to finance part of the purchase. Basically, $20 billion of the cost is paid to shareholders of EA itself, which will have to take a massive loan. Aside from the dangerous debt burden now placed on EA, there are worries about who is buying them, why, and what their plans are. PIF is a Saudi Arabia sovereign wealth fund, the country's attempt to diversify revenue away from oil. But this is an authoritarian, repressive regime raising concerns about censorship or propaganda seeping into EA's games. Then there is the Affinity Partners, headed by POTUS's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a controversial figure in his own right, with a portfolio focused on risky and questionable Middle Eastern deals as of late. Silver Lake, in comparison, looks tame. There are fairly standard private equity firm and often function more as facilitators and financiers than direct active managers for their properties. Then there is the fear of AI. To pay for itself, EA has to be leaner and more profitable. It kind of seems like the bet is on AI reducing the cost of them making their games and inviting justifiable concerns about significant layoffs coming very soon. I don't know if I really have a take on this, Dan. What is yours?
Not much beyond don't like it, and I don't know. I feel like a lot of these big gaming these big gaming publishers are in very tenuous positions right now. With like, I think a lot of Activision studios are in tenuous positions right now. Now I think EA is in a tenuous position, and we'll see if they continue existing in the way they do for that much longer. Whether that means their games get increasingly censored, whether that means a bunch of their studios get closed, a bit of both. I don't know. I don't like it.
Yeah. It's an increasing problem I have as well. I mean, look, I'm not going to boycott Battlefield 6. I'm insanely excited for Battlefield 6. I won't even pretend anything but that. But I remember back to Battlefield 4. Remember, Dan, there were 3 factions. There was China, Russia, and America, and their vehicles looked different. And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought that was really fun. Nothing against the Chinese people. I just think it's a video game. Let's have a Chinese tank shooting an American tank, have a Russian helicopter fly in. Come on, let's have some fun. And increasingly, you've seen nothing but like Russia versus the US. Then the war in Ukraine happens. And then now what? Like Battlefield 6 is this Russia, but not Russia, fighting NATO, but kind of not the US because we're scared. Just like, come on. I remember Battlefield 2. I swear on PC, it had like 4 factions. I think there was like Europe. There's a Middle Eastern one, I swear, like Russia, America, like. And we're seeing less and less and less of that in games. And that really concerns me. Like, what's going to happen now? Like, is there like no mention of like Saudi Arabia shows up as a hero at some point? Like, I don't know. I'm concerned.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much else to add other than bad.
Yeah. We have our own issues with consolidation at times, but at least when like Microsoft's buying Bethesda, it's an American company, they'll probably let them do whatever they want. Same with Sony buying Bungie. But this is very concerning. I guess we'll see where this goes, but I really hope this doesn't although I think we all know it will to a degree, lead to too massive of layoffs with AI trying to replace it. And then we just get worse games that don't work as well. And I don't know. We'll see. And, and have the Saudi Arabian flag in the background at all times. We'll see. This piece of content is brought to you by the fans that support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And it does need supporting, from personal attacks from tech elites that get mad when we tell you that they are lying to gamers and their own shareholders, to legal attacks from mega corporations that cost the team time and money. This is expensive and often very stressful work. And it's work that doesn't depend on access journalism, nor depend on NDAs or agreements that would sanitize our opinions and hold us back. No, nothing holds us back, and we are independently funded, and we use said funding to do things like pay professional renderers to show you products before they come out so that the sources that provided us the original pictures don't get in trouble. Or we also create bonus content like Die Shrinks, where you have videos and interviews coming out multiple times a month exclusively to reward our patrons with the extra content that we know they would like to see, whether it's inside scoops or more in-depth conversation and stuff that we just know wouldn't profit if we put it out publicly, but it doesn't need to profit for our fans on Patreon because it is self-funded. And so if you want any of that bonus content, or you want to support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead, or honestly, if you just want to support me, Dan, Gerard, Carbon Cry, or Jesse and Maurice so that we have food on the table every day, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And to those that already support us there, I'll see you on the Discord. All right. Let us move on now to the wrap up. Not too many here today. We got Intel Core X reportedly arriving with Panther Lake. This was reported by HXL. HXL, in my opinion, is one of the few people that actually has a pretty goddamn standard, not crazy, but consistent and accurate track record of leaking. Yeah. I don't know what this means. Oh, so yeah, and he's suggesting there's i3, 5, 7, and 9, presumably with Panther, the continued Raptor Lake rebrands that come out. And then above that, you get Core Ultra 5, 7, 9. And then now there's Core Ultra X5, X7, and X9. All right, okay. So what does that mean? Does that mean that's the top end one, maybe? Oh, maybe that means that's the overclocked one.
Probably, yeah.
Hopefully. I hope it doesn't mean that they think Core Ultra wasn't sexy enough, and that's why Meteor Lake didn't sell well. So we're going to add an X to Panther Lake. Hopefully that's not what that means. Also, I like this next one here, not just because I love seeing Steve from Hardware Unboxed look like Mugatu from Zoolander. Fantastic movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Saying RDNA 4 is so hot right now, or 9070 XT is so hot right now. But this stirred up some it's funny. This stirred up a bit of discussion online because he was kind of saying similar stuff to us that like, no, like there's all these like basically saying Steam hardware survey should be entirely ignored. Thank God someone else huge is now saying that. And also saying that he can't really say anything about John Petty research for Sir, but it does not add up to what he knows. He says, at least in Australia, the 9070 XT has outsold the 5070 Ti 3-1 in the last 6 months. And the 9070 XT has outsold the 5070 Ti by 2-1 in the last 30 days. Remember, now this 5070 Ti is below MSRP. And the 9060 XT has outsold the 5060 Ti by 100%. 2-1. 9070 outsold 5070 by 70% in Australia. I mean,
sometimes when you see the Steam hardware survey, it's like, so what? Have they sold 8 RDNA 4 GPUs or something? Like that's the impression that comes off from them.
But then he also says things that we also said. Like I basically said similar things. Looking at Newegg, the top 10, most of it's AMD last time I checked. And then you go to Mind Factory. So he's in Australia. I mentioned Newegg in the US. We have Mind Factory here that both me and Steve pull from. In Europe, AMD Radeon 55% market share GPU. So I don't know where John Petty's research is coming from because nothing suggests this. And in fact, and he responded to me on Twitter in agreement. We both talked about this. If you look at gaming revenue share for AMD versus NVIDIA, both of them are up a lot year over year. Good year for both GeForce and Radeon. But AMD is up, I don't remember what it was. It's like 79%, I think, and NVIDIA is up like 49%. So AMD's up more than them. That means gaining share, especially in a quarter where the Switch just launched with NVIDIA, which would be in their gaming revenue, and NVIDIA's margins are higher. Right. So if NVIDIA has 100% margin and AMD is 50, it's probably not. It's probably like AMD's 45, NVIDIA's 70, but whatever it is. Point being, if NVIDIA has double the margin and revenue goes up 1%, that's less cards sold.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you are charging more profit, have a higher profit margin on each card, revenue goes up the same amount between two companies. The company with less margins sold more cards because they have less fat on top. So all data, whether it's official earnings, Mind Factory, Australian sales, US sales, European, all sales suggest AMD is selling well and selling incredibly well. NVIDIA would not launch Super unless they needed to combat this. And they will within the next, 3 or 4 months. So I'm really glad to see Hardware Unboxed say this. I don't know where some data is coming from, and I'm tired of the clickbait websites saying that AMD is fucking 6% market share. Shut up. They do not have 6% market share and have most of the top 10 sales on Newegg GPU. They don't. And people have got to stop quoting that stuff and making clickbait. It was actually a big deal to me. It could have been a story just talking about that, Steve. I'm hoping more people that actually can look at data accurately come out and do this, because I don't know if you have anything else to add to this, but thank God someone else is saying this.
Yeah.
All right, so this is interesting here. Carbon Cry added this one to the wrap up. He says, is AMD fabbing at Intel a hoax? Now, we're quoting here from Semi-Accurate, which I would agree based on their name. You know what? They're usually pretty accurately, I would say, because compared to most leakers, Semi-Accurate is like, the people that said RDNA 3 would be 4 times the performance of RDNA 2? Those people were Semi-Accurate. Semi-Accurate's usually right. Here, they had a Q&A with someone at AMD. Semi-Accurate asks, I'm reading a transcript, is AMD fabbing at Intel? Answer, no. Longer answer, no. Full of unsuitable for family words. How do you know? AMD person, I asked multiple people on both sides who know, and everyone said it is bullshit. None even hinted that there is something in the works. All said they heard no. So why did multiple financial-oriented analysts and sites say it? Asked Charlie. AMD, the best answer, Semi-Accurate has heard from multiple sources that it appears that someone was trying to cover a short.
Oh, cool.
It happens all the time. Of course, allegedly, I'm quoting them. I'm not making that accusation, but just cover ourselves legally there. But this goes back to, I think, a question from Techno earlier. Like, what about this? What about, using Intel or using Samsung? People at AMD, it's like all TSMC, from what I hear. So
that makes sense. They have a pretty long relationship with TSMC at this point.
Yeah. I will say I did speak to one person at AMD that is worried that the current administration in the United States pushing AMD to blow up their roadmap and use Intel scares them. But
I'm sure.
Carbon Cry did point this out to me. AMD should make one product on Intel's nodes just so they get access to all documentation on their progress. Like, would Intel even want that? I don't know. This is also interesting. The PlayStation 5 Slim revision that's coming out, that I believe reduces storage capacity, does maybe fix the liquid metal issue that we extensively reported on in a recent Broken Silicon with, I believe it was Alderaan Games. So there you go.
That's a plus.
I guess that's notable that the newer ones have a fix. I believe the PS5 Pro also had some sort of similar fix as well. There was also, this one's pretty big, actually. It blew up in my feed. It's not something I get into in depth because I focus on the hardware more than the software, but Unity discloses a years-old security exploit and urges developers to update their games. And I saw some follow-ups here with Obsidian removing games from stores because of Unity.
Yeah,
this is huge.
That's bad. I don't know what else to add to that, but I hope user information isn't getting compromised because of it.
Gotta say, after the whole Unity fiasco where they tried to charge hilarious amounts of money to use their stuff, not looking good at Unity. Not looking good. Jensen Wang writes in, yet again, really dominating this episode for whatever reason.
Thank you, Jensen.
Thank you. Thanks, Papa. With the rise in developmental cost of games and the increase in sequels, is it instead time for game studios to focus more on expansions as a way to easily develop things, which take a working formula and expand on it without having to make a whole new game? DLC kind of fills this role, but tends to be far smaller than expansions of PC's gaming pass, at least. Yeah, I mean, I think if you have a solid big hit, it would make more sense to continue to do expansions a la GTA 5 Online and Destiny 2. Like if Borderlands 3, I just don't think sold as well as they wanted it to. But ultimately, if Borderlands 4 ends up a hit, and so far it seems like it is. By the way, let me say, me and Dan, we think that the recent patches have made it work perfectly fine on PS5 Pro. Like, I think you could still do more work to make it feel like it performs as well as it should compared to like The Last of Us Part 2 running at like 100 frames per second in 4K. Well, like 80, I think it is, but it's probably because of a CPU bottleneck, honestly. But anyways, what was I going to say? Like, yes, no, it's not as impressive as that game or Death Stranding 2, I guess, but it is doing a lot. And maybe if they continue to fix performance and it continues to sell well, Borderlands 4 should just get 30 expansions like Borderlands 2 did. Borderlands 2 got a ton. They did like $4 holiday expansions for a couple of years that me and Dan played. They were added like 2 raid bosses and were a blast. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot of studios that if they have a hit should stop and see if they can just do DLC. Yeah.
Yeah, that and the half game, I guess you'd call it, the standalone DLCs are always like, or even like beyond that, because I don't think like you would call Spider-Man Miles Morales. Would you call that a standalone DLC? I guess
it is its own game. It's just not huge, and they didn't charge too much for it.
Yeah,
there should be more games like that too.
Yeah, where it's like, I mean, we spent all of this money on all of these assets, or in that game specifically, we spent all this money developing this map. Let's just reuse a ton of assets and make a different game. That's, I think, a good way to stretch out the budgets, to stretch out your budgets.
And then they charge $50 instead of $70, and it sells really well. Like more games, like don't take this Assassin's Creed, find a way to milk it with the same map again, which I don't know if they really ever did that. But just as an example, if they wanted to do something like that, and then just go, and now we're going to add all of these AI, might as well be AI generated garbage side missions. No, just you can reuse the map, give us a new missions and new characters and maybe some new small areas. And then when you do that, you don't need to add all the fluff and just charge less, and more people will buy it, and it'll save you a ton of developmental cost.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I hope it was a fun journey.
Me too. I don't know why we're talking like this now.
I don't know why either, but what I do know is that you should make sure you're subscribed to Moore's Law is Dead on YouTube and ring the bell button to not miss all of those upcoming leaks. And then if you have the extra money, please support us on Patreon. We just put out a new die shrink that is now at all tiers can access it, even the $1 tier. Speaking of that, the $1 tier, which is a newer tier added, can ask all guest questions. The next guest will be Dustin Furman from Sacred Symbols. And oh boy, is this good timing to have someone on who plays a lot of Xbox and PlayStation in addition to PC.
Yeah.
We will have a lot to talk about the changing gaming marketplace here. So ask Dustin questions if you join the Patreon. And then otherwise, I don't know that there's much else to say. You know, subscribe to Broken Silicon, your podcast app of choice, and give us a review there. It really does help a lot there too, especially since we're now part of a podcast network. Believe we want those podcast numbers up too. And then share, comment below, and spread the good word.
Yeah.
Moore's Law is dead, everybody. And otherwise, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a good rest of your week, everybody.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the about/support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong, we love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Full, Z Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Spuckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Toka, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jerome Ferriero, Velcom Alev, Compressed AI Blocks, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Buma, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, Curry King 3, Krizin Thenos, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake223, Jake Martin, Slicky, Gamers Unite, Amiable Chief, Ian Clifford, Aisha, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Zoot Suit Taylor, Mads, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, Winwing, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Colatic, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Winstar, Little Germany, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, John Swin, Jansen Angima, Slushbob, Brian Wright, Sisyphos 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RV Racer, Alex Vega, Michael Cozy, Crystal Joe, Solarized 80, Albergun, Kikum, Sprutnik, Brian P, Hoodat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, State Farm Snake, Matthew Cassels, Omega Doge, Huger, Ander Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Nixus Mania, AI Soldiers 789, Smash Axley, Kareem Al Masri, Bespoke exclamation point, Rye Hill, Chi Bowles, Dam 1988, Fred Berger, Kevin Kuntz, Manolis Ragakusis, Armand Vakatur, Jonathan Harris, Callan Reichel, Kainush Kagani, Zabir Ahmed, Johnny Trans, Bjorn Toft, Josh Truna, Arnai RK0, Penguins from NKVD, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.